Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci, and welcome to technology. I wish I could have a camera show what my screen is doing. All these windows are popping up, and it's saying like, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm trying to playing whack a mole with all these windows that are coming up. I love technology, but then again, if it wasn't for technology, we wouldn't be here with you folks. So here we are, ready to
Trade-offs.
go. All right. I said we're ready to go. Let's start with the most important story we could possibly have to talk about, and that is aquatics.
Sure, we can definitely take a look at that. now,
Summer Macintosh.
that's correct. Not a lot of people know this, but they're actually prepping for certain competitions during the summer right now. So, at the Toronto Pan Am Sports Center, as part of the National Trials, Summer Macintosh is now the world record holder in the 400-meter freestyle event. Summer stopped the clock at a time of 3:56:08, breaking the world record held by Ariarne Titmus of Australia. It's her first world record, but she also has many world junior and national records, on their own. So this is absolutely fantastic. It's a good sign for Team Canada coming up to the games.
Now, tell me something about aquatics in the winter. Is the water cold?
Come on, Frank. It's all
Oh,
heated pools. It's all done
oh,
indoors.
this is
So it's
they do this
controlled
in.
conditions.
Oh, I thought they did this in Lake Ontario.
No, no, no. No,
No, they don't
these
do it
are
in
in the
Lake
old
Ontario.
unused Pan Am facilities, that have sort of languished and sat empty for the past 6, 7 years. So
Well, I was going to say that yeah, that we haven't really Ontario, Toronto really hasn't spent a lot of money on on Olympic type sports, right? So
no.
this is something rare and unusual, and it's one of the reasons why some communities in Canada, like Calgary, for example, a lot of the Olympians, they have that Olympic stadium and that Olympic set of venues that they have there that they can work, at that sport. So we're not that we haven't really enjoyed the benefit of those things as much as some of the other provinces like Alberta, Quebec. So it's kind of nice to see summer do something.
No, it
And
is
we,
it is very nice to see, and I'm glad that some of those facilities are actually getting used. I had hopes that the old housing facilities would have been turned into something advantageous for citizens in Toronto, but that doesn't seem to have been the case.
well, maybe tomorrow, another day.
You never know.
Speaking of another day of a game that the Leafs must play that's basically irrelevant unless they lose, which fortunately for Leaf fans isn't often, but still not enough. Sheldon Keefe. Um, there was an incident on the Leaf bench that's gone viral.
Well, you know how they have cameras pointed at everything these
Oh,
days.
for
Well,
sure.
there was a small portion of the game where Sheldon was attempting to impart some wisdom to former Rookie of the Year candidate Michael Bunting, and it appeared that Michael wasn't paying very close attention. So this, of course, immediately inspired concerns and tons of people posting about how Bunting needs to be sat and he's ignoring the coach and Keefe has lost the room and we better get rid of him quickly. And while we're at it, let's fire Dubas and trade Nylander and all the usual stuff that you'd expect to follow from this sort of garbage. But it's basically both player and coach spoke about it and said it's not a big deal. So
So, using what kind of language the kids would use, the situation got kind of memeified.
yeah, it got memeified. It then decided to go viral. It's one of those. It didn't really have to be there. So it's you know part of this is also in light of the fact that Bunting has been replaced on the left hand side on the top line. Uh, he's been basically replaced by Calle Yarncroke, which has bumped him down the lineup, which some people believe is the cause of much discontent and concern amongst Leafs Nation and amongst the players themselves. I personally think it's tempest in a teacup time, but people will have their say on social media as is their wont.
I think I think I agree with you with what you're saying. I think I understand, not agree. I understand what you're saying, and not that I don't agree. I understand what you're saying. I think also what's happening here is that you and I have had this conversation. We've had a conversation about Bunting's lack of discipline. Now, and when we talk about lack of discipline, to make sure we're both on the same page, it's the kind of behavior that is negative, has a negative result on behalf of the team. His antics, and it's quite possible that the straight go to work every day, pick up your lunchbox, nose to the grindstone type of behavior by young Croak has kind of overshadowed and or uh, it's basically shown Bunting's play, the negative side of his play. But the one thing that Bunting has, that I'm not saying Yarncroke doesn't have, he hasn't been given an opportunity to show it yet, is maybe even to I don't know, he crosses the line. His whole thing is he's a team player. He backs up his friends, his allies, his teammates all the time. Bunting does. He's not afraid of anybody in defense of his teammates, and then it just goes a little bit too far. Maybe this is a message the coach is trying to send him. And if you notice, that little conversation they had was after he had a little bit of a spat that was senseless. And that's when the coach, I think, spoke to him. So here's the thing, in my opinion. Absolutely. That's an important situation. Absolutely. It is a disagreement between player and coach, and in the sense that the player did something, the coach disagreed with what he did, and he was just telling him. And the player, of course, if he doesn't dutifully turn around and bow his head and do all this kind of stuff, all of a sudden he's revolting. Now, what he does sometimes is revolting, but in that case, I don't think it was revolting. It was just him doing something, you know, I guess a la Bunting, right? Because he is an independent mind, right? He's a guy who marches by the beat of a different drummer, and the coach, I think, knows that. But the coach gave him a message, said something to him. Do I know what he said? No. Do you know what he said? No. What we do know, though, is the coach said something to him, and coaches say things to players, and they expect a reaction or an action, whatever it is. So down the road, we'll find out more and more. As yet, Bunting has not been sat out a game. So the coach's, displeasure with the player, we'll see if he gets sat out for a game, if Bunting continues what I think is the kind of behavior I think the coach doesn't want to happen during the playoffs, because every playoff penalty, power play, missed opportunity becomes giant in scope. So, we all know how important the playoffs are, and we know how small little issues like tossing the puck over the glass, like Marner did, seems to change the whole game and the whole series. So this is what they're getting ready for. They just got to make sure they don't do things that antagonize the opposition to the point where it becomes an advantage for them emotionally and also physically. By that, I mean the Leafs playing shorthanded. How is that for a rant?
That works just fine.
Okay. I like when you say that. You get paid later. Okay, let's talk about another team that won't be in the playoffs, at least doesn't Magic. Well, they're not eliminated yet, but they're pretty much eliminated. The Montreal Canadiens, a team that made it to the Stanley Cup final just a few short years ago. And now they're struggling, but there is the upside to it. But let's talk about this game in particular. Pizzetta scores, shootout winner.
So this is continuing an up and down trend for the Montreal Canadiens. Pizzetta did manage to score the shootout winner, and Brendan Gallagher and the Habs have managed to stave off playoff elimination, at least temporarily. Now, there's only 3 weeks left in the season, and the Buffalo, by losing that game, also find themselves on the short end here. Both teams are getting down to the short strokes when it comes to getting into the playoffs here.
Absolutely.
It is going to be interesting to watch, to see these two, whether they decide to just pull the plug completely or try for a last minute push. Montreal certainly helped their case by beating Buffalo, but there's something to be said for consistency.
If that was the up, the down was against the Flyers for Montreal.
Exactly. They turned around and after winning that game, managed to lose to the Philadelphia Flyers just the very next night. I understand that it is a back to back here that we're looking at Monday and Tuesday night. The Flyers, however, after everything seemed absolutely abysmal, wrapped up a 7-game homestand 5-1-1. So neither team here is doing themselves any favors when it comes to the Bedard sweepstakes. Um, but it's one of those situations where, despite themselves, Montreal couldn't help but lose. And I'm at a loss as to explain the ups and downs with this team. And they're nose to tail when it comes to the standings here. Philadelphia is 8th, and Montreal is 9th when it comes to the wild card. They're both not entirely out of it, but everything is getting a little too far away from them.
Well, these are the kind of situations that are frustrating for the fans. It's nice that they have this little bit of a tear, this home 5-1-1 stand, um, but it just speaks to the fact that this is it. This is the good moment. But it's that old adage that we use nowadays in sports: garbage time. It's great to have a 5-1 streak, but when it's following, you need a 10-0 streak to make some sort of noise towards a playoff spot. It's still not enough, but there have to be teams that play well to win, and there are teams that don't play well to lose. And right now, the three teams that you just talked about are teams that, as you said, and you're 100% right, inconsistency for the Flyers, Habs, and Montreal Canadiens have put them in the position where they need perfection now to make any kind of attempt to make the playoffs. And even that kind of perfection is getting to the point with 3 weeks left, as you said. Even perfection isn't going to get you there. So anyway, let's talk about a team to whom perfection has been elusive, but they've been, if consistently playing well is a team that can make the playoffs. The Jets have done that. They've been, they've had bad games, but they've consistently won enough to be in the conversation for the playoffs. Um, this is a team that, you know, man, Aaron, this is a team that a few years ago Stanley Cup bound, and now they're struggling to make the playoffs. But making the playoffs can make a big difference when you have a goaltender like Hellebuck. And speaking of goaltenders, that kid Reimer.
Yeah, managed to put up a shutout as the San Jose Sharks, who are last in the Pacific Division with 55 points, managed to hang a 3-0 win on Winnipeg. Unfortunately, it was not the game that they were hoping for. Winnipeg, over the course of the past 10 games, is looking at 5-5-0. San Jose is 1-6-3 in their past 10, and that one just happens to be against a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations. I mean, as it currently stands, with where Winnipeg is in the standings, they are currently right behind Seattle, or tied with Seattle. Sorry for that. No, sorry, right behind Seattle. My bad. For that wild card spot. Seattle's got 88 points. Winnipeg has 85. So they're really, again, there's a lot of teams that are just shooting themselves in the foot here, and it's too late in the season for stumbles and gaffes like that.
It's like I told you from the beginning of the season, Aaron. If you remember, everything I said was the Leafs have to get into a position where they're not struggling to make the playoffs. Now, that's not to suggest a team that's struggling to make the playoffs that makes the playoffs doesn't have a successful run. The St. Louis Blues won a Stanley Cup doing that. So, and there have been other teams that have won Stanley Cups. The Montreal Canadiens made it to the Stanley Cup final. But the odds of that are very slim. It's much easier to get into the home stretch in a nice position where you can think about players, teams, line mates, goaltending, schedule management as far as players are concerned. It's much better to be in the position the Leafs are in than the one Winnipeg's in. You can ask anybody before the season if that's what you want from the Jets to be where they are now. Nope. Jets fans and anybody who's hoping for the Jets, like me, that hopes the Jets have a great run in the playoffs, as I do for every Canadian team, they're making it hard on themselves because they're going to shoot a lot of their effort and before the playoffs even arrive. On, geez, uh, the Flames. Markstrom has a royal game and reigns over Kings. I'm reading this, folks. This is Aaron's writing, not mine. I'm not taking
It's
credit.
a terrible headline, which I would
Oh
like to
my
state just for
God!
the record, I did not write. It
You
was
you could.
absolutely
Oh, okay. You
brutal.
didn't write it.
Oh
So I
heck
would have said
no!
more something like Markstrom crowns. No, never mind.
Markstrom dethrones Kings is probably what I
Even
would have
better. Let's
written.
waste our time with some of the dumbest terminology we can find. No,
Oh
just kidding. Cliches are cliches. Onward and upward, buddy.
yeah, no, I mean the Kings have been the NHL's hottest team. They coming into their game against Calgary the other night. They had a franchise record 12-game point streak at 10-0-2, in which they outscored opponents 52-28.
Wow.
So, after a performance like that in the past 12 games, they just turned around and took a big dump on the sofa and ended up losing to the Flames 2-1. This helps Calgary, obviously. They're currently sitting at 83 points, 2 points behind Winnipeg, looking up their tailpipe and chasing Seattle. A little further, just up the road, of course, is Edmonton, who's with 95 points, LA with 96, and Vegas have managed to retake first place in the Western Conference with 98 points. So, Los Angeles and Las Vegas are doing their whole seesaw thing again. Meanwhile, Calgary is just trying to pick up whatever points they can.
So Nugent Hopkins darkens the door of the Golden Knights.
Yeah, Nugent Hopkins had a fantastic night. He had 5 points, and the Edmonton Power Play scored 3 goals as they dropped the Golden Knights 7-4. That was last night. Um, because LA lost to Calgary. Edmonton will actually be hosting the Kings tomorrow, so this puts them a little bit closer to their goal. This is shaping up to be
Oh
a
my!
bit of an interesting race here because all three teams in the Pacific Division are so close. Vegas with 98, as we just mentioned, LA with 96, and Edmonton with 95. This is almost as exciting as the Central, where Minnesota has 95 and Colorado and Dallas are both tied with 94 points.
Why is that important? Because to every team that gets an extra playoff game, it's about $500,000 for a playoff game,
And home ice advantage is just so absolutely
and
incredibly important.
that's profit. So
Yeah.
the ownership's going, come on, boys, you can do this. Come on, let's go, let's go. Okay, let's talk about the Canucks, a team. Well, they're a skating enigma. Unfortunately, their defense and St. Louis's defense were having nap time. This was not a titanic defensive struggle.
No, this was definitely a seesaw battle. The problem here is that Vancouver isn't quite good enough, but also not quite bad enough to be where they want to be for this sort of thing. They're currently sitting sixth in the Pacific. They're playing St. Louis, who are also is sitting sixth in the Pacific and actually tied with them with 74 points. So it was actually a reasonably close game, and that was evidenced by the fact that Vrana actually had to score in overtime for the Blues to take it 6-5.
Let's go to a story. If I can skip to one, let's skip to Gwyneth Paltrow. Boy, these trials, you say something you think it's a good idea to say, and then no sooner than you say it that it comes out of your mouth, you wish you could hit rewind.
Well, there was actually this talk on discussion boards about the injuries that the plaintiff had. So when Mr. Sanderson originally brought this $300,000 lawsuit in 2019, and there was apparently somebody who had recorded this on a GoPro, but nobody could find the footage. There was also a link in a discussion board to further evidence, if you will, and discussion of the incident that people just couldn't seem to figure out how to get to.
Has anybody seen it, Aaron, or is this just a conversation somebody's having?
It's speculation. There was a belief that somebody had a GoPro video because there was a blood curdling scream at some point. Now, in the text messages that were uncovered, there was also supposedly a link to this purported video. nobody could figure out on the investigative teams that you actually had to sign up for the website in order to be able to click the link. So they were just trying to surf in independently and just click on the link and hope that they would be able to pick it up. Nobody actually thought to register for the website. So, this piece of evidence just sort of sat there.
What was the person responsible for this situation as far as thinking there might have been a video? Was it that cat turd guy on Twitter?
Oh God, it would have been hilarious if
It
it was
wasn't
the
that
cat
cat
turd
turd
guy.
guy.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, in case you're wondering who the cat turd guy is, he's a guy who posted that Trump was leading 64 to 29 and percentage. The polls had him in that advantage, and Trump was really mad because at the event that he was at in Waco, Texas, that he in fact was only 50 to 39 or something. Yeah. So here's the thing with that story. You've got the I think the sympathy goes to the guy only because the injuries that he claimed were kind of scary, and the daughter said that after the incident that he changed a lot. His personality completely changed, and and this is one of those things that you and I have talked about how slowly the legal system moves. This incident happened in 7 years ago, and they're talking about it now. And what I'll do, the last thing I'm going to say about this case, and then you can take over, is that if someone says there might be a video out there, what effect do you think that has on the two people having a debate
Well,
in
I
court?
mean, it certainly instills confidence in whoever believes that they know what the video actually shows. Um, I think a
They're going to
large
speak louder, and the other's going to speak quieter.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I just thought it was interesting that some of the other folk indicated that Gwyneth Paltrow flew out of the resort the day after this collision occurred, and that Mr. Sanderson did have a concussion as well as potentially a couple broken ribs. He had mentioned that, yeah, it only hurts when I breathe. Uh, he had written on this online message board. There was also mentioned the concussion causing bizarre physical and personality issues. I'm hoping that resolves quickly. Apparently, he was knocked out cold. So, this is one of those things where she says that he hit her from behind, but everyone else and everyone who has posted about this is claiming that she ran into him. So, it's he said, she said, involving the slopes, and we may never know where this is going to end up. To be honest with you.
And Aaron, the crazy thing about this is that, and I'm sure everybody in their lives not found themselves in this situation, but sometimes it's not about the money, right? It's about pride, that kind of thing. In this case, I say it because Gwyneth Paltrow has the money to pay the damages. It wouldn't. I don't think. Listen, I don't know what her bank. I don't have her bank statements. I don't have her bank book. I don't know what her income is, but I suspect 100 and change is not going to put a real big dent in her, in her life. So to end up in this situation, to go public like this, I would think that you'd want it to be something. Um, I'm not saying a slam dunk, Aaron, but you know, you've I don't know. I just like, is this cool to be in this situation? Is the previous trials that we've seen, the famous trials, and all the attention the trials get, is it something that actors or people in general want to be a part of? Like, does it feed their fame?
I can't speak for Gwyneth Paltrow, but I know that for my own peace of mind, I would rather not be involved in some sort of out in public imbroglio like this. I mean, especially for something that happened in 2016, which is 7 years ago now. I mean, already Ms. Paltrow's attorneys are trying to paint Mr. Sanderson as a 76-year-old whose inability to taste, personality changes, and what have you are all as a result of a normal course of aging, and calling him basically an old fogey trying to scam this younger actress out of money. It seems rather defamatory to try to do that. But as it currently stands, like I mentioned before, Mr. Sanderson is seeking $300,000 in injury, and Gwyneth has filed a countersuit in which he has asked for a symbolic $1 should she win, and for her legal expenses to be covered, which could possibly end up being far more than $300,000.
And
So,
that $1 is represented by the middle finger, I think. Um, you know, this has been fun, Aaron.
hey, I appreciate it, Frank.
Any passing or parting words you have for us?
Yeah, if you're ever going to be in Quebec and looking for an Airbnb, caveat emptor, a little Latin phrase meaning buyer beware. 79% of Quebec rentals in the month of February were not certified by the Quebec Housing Authority. So, just if you're going to be out and about and traveling, folks, just be careful and know what you're getting yourself into.
What does that exactly mean to somebody if it's not certified?
Well, there is a regulatory board that oversees facilities that can be rented. Now, 95% of the Airbnb listings in the northern suburb of Laval, for example, were uncertified. What that means is they've had somebody go in and say this is safe for human habitation. There's no mold. There's adequate fire prevention. There's smoke detectors that work. This sort of thing would be a concern if you're going on vacation.
Um, there's this place somewhere in Ontario. I think it's called Collingwood. So if you're into skiing, why not help the neighbors?
Most definitely. And, as long as they've got the certification number to go along with their Airbnb listing, I'm more than happy to help out.
There you go. Aaron, thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Frank.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Frank Stanisci. You've been watching Candid Frank Live. You can check out a lot of the other shows on Candid Frank Live, the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time. And that'll be Friday.
We'll see you then.
See you all then.